am Ally Baker, and I'm a supervisor here at TLC. As you might have seen in Neil's email outlining morning reflection topics, I initially signed on to talk about gender. But after I sat down and brainstormed what I thought I wanted to say to you all, I felt very conflicted. Because while it's really, really important to talk about women's experiences, it does not do good for all women if we don't make it an intersectional conversation. And so I have to recognize that my experience as a white woman is very different than the experience of Black, brown, or Indigenous women in this country. So if you will let me, I would like to retitle this conversation, My Role as a White Woman. I'd like to begin by asking you to reflect on a time in your life in which you have felt shame. For some of you, maybe a moment came to your mind right away. I know that was the case for me. And maybe it's a moment that happened a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe even a decade ago, but I'm guessing that you remember it pretty vividly. Those moments in which we feel shame really seem to stick with us. So the moment that came to my mind was a moment I was sitting in a classroom and something that I said in class exposed me as a white suburban girl who was absolutely clueless about the reality of racism in this country. It exposed that I had grown up thinking that we lived in a post-racial society, meaning that racism was something of the past, besides a few outspoken white supremacist groups. And I remember everything about that moment. I remember the classroom, where I was sitting, who I was sitting next to. I remember my face getting very flushed, sinking down into my seat, and booking it out of the classroom before anyone could say a word to me. I want to pause and talk about shame for a moment. Brene Brown is a research professor at the University of Houston, and she's one of my favorite authors. And she talks about shame in this way, and I think it's really useful in this context. She says, if you think about connection on a continuum, what I've learned in my research is that anchoring one end of the continuum is empathy. It is what moves us towards deep, meaningful relationships. And on the other side of the continuum is shame. It absolutely unravels our relationships and our connections with other people. So her research tells us that we literally cannot feel shame and empathy simultaneously because shame inhibits our ability to be others-focused. I wasted an entire year following that memorable, shameful moment in my life. I spent that year focused on shame because any learning that I did about race or racism was not driven by empathy, but it was driven by not ever wanting to feel that shame again. It was driven by wanting to get it right the next time. But little did I realize that still puts myself, a white woman, at the center of the narrative. And as my good friend Janet told you a few weeks ago in her morning reflection about intersectionality, equity work cannot be a side project. We cannot multitask. It needs all of our attention, and it has to be center stage. So I can't put myself, a white woman, at the center of the stage. So for that wasted year following that moment of deep shame, I prided myself on learning all about racism and all of the phobias, and I still made countless more shameful missteps that are permanently etched into my brain. One example being asking a pretty ignorant question to one of my Black friends about her new hairstyle without making an effort to look into the historical context or cultural significance of Black women's hair. Another one that comes to mind is invading safe spaces for people of color in the name of being an ally, but all the while I was invading those spaces and therefore they became unsafe. I just wanted to prove so badly that I was someone who gets it, as if getting it means that, we're a finished product and we have no further work to do on ourselves. And I think that most people view racism in this way. There's something called the good versus bad binary, and it says that if you are a kind, caring, good person, then you can't be racist, then you're not racist. So then the alternative to that is that you are a bad person, and then what that means is that you are actively, consciously, maybe even outspokenly racist. But I have a hard time believing that many people would put themselves in this bad person category. And especially knowing the group of people that we generally get at TLC, you're probably a really great, kind, well-intentioned person. But the danger of this false dichotomy is that once you put yourself in this good person category, you feel like, well, I'm not part of the problem, and therefore I have no further work to do on myself. But being a good and well-intentioned person does not exempt us from the fact that we are actively benefiting from systems in place that are designed to keep white people on top. And that's a system, a healthcare system that makes pregnancy-related deaths 3.2 times more likely for black mothers than white mothers. That's a housing system founded in redlining and racial covenants that makes it nearly impossible for black families to buy a home instead of rent. It's a system in which Latina women would have to work for 23 months to earn what white men earn in a year. And it's a system in which the net worth of the median white family is nearly 10 times greater than the median black family. So I finally arrived at my new conversation title, and that is my role as a white woman. So what is my role as a white woman, and in what ways can I support and help black, brown, and indigenous women in this country? How can I be better? And so I have 3 takeaways for you. The first takeaway is just the acknowledgement of that good versus bad binary, right? Understanding that even if you are a good, kind, caring, well-intentioned person, that you still have lots of learning and unlearning to do. So instead of racist versus not racist, I think that we can view it as a continuum of learning, and that's a continuum that we will probably never escape in our lifetime because there's always more learning and unlearning to do. The second takeaway I have for you is to do your homework. Right? The internet gives us access to so many outstanding educational resources that it's really not hard for us to do our homework. And I'm going to ask that you don't put the burden of teaching on your black friends, coworkers, and community members. I sometimes catch myself on this one, even with the best intentions, again, even if I'm trying to learn. But if it's a simple question that could be a Google search, I didn't do my homework. And it's really different for me than it is for the person of color on the other end of that conversation, because for me, it's a conversation that at the end of the day, I get to leave behind and forget for a while. But for the person on the other end of that conversation, it's about their identity and it's their everyday lived experience. And that is unfair and exhausting to constantly ask of people of color. So I encourage you to do your homework and put in the work, because there's a lot of great stuff out there. My third and final takeaway for you will sound very familiar, and it's something that Neil's going to talk about next week, and that is to practice gratitude. What if, instead of focusing on that feeling of shame, instead of getting really defensive, what if instead we practiced gratitude in those moments when people held us accountable for our missteps? What if we took a deep breath and felt grateful for the opportunity to learn? What if we even thanked those people that pointed out our missteps? Because that means that that person thinks that we can do better and we can be better. So let's practice gratitude instead of focusing on our shame. I'm going to sing a song by Neil and Leandra, and it's called Star Girls. and it's a song that really deeply impacted me the first time that I heard it. There are some lyrics that really made me feel validated as a girl and as a woman. It really validated my experience. But this time I would like to dedicate this song to Black women and girls in this country. I want to dedicate this song to brown and indigenous girls and women in this country. And I want to dedicate this song to gender non-conforming people of color in this country. All of the girls whose names will never be known. All of the girls whose choices were not their own. All of the girls denied their share of the gold. All of the girls like cattle bought and sold. All of the girls who would not submit to a man. All of the girls the boys could not understand. All of the girls whose place at the table was barred. All of the girls who number more than the stars. This is for you. I see you shine, sparkling like jewels in the night. Wherever I go, whatever I do, the stardust in me is from you. All of the girls who could not tear the veil. All of the girls who tried and tried but failed. All of the girls who did not have a say when the holy writers took their words away. This is for you. I see you shine, sparkling like jewels in the night. Wherever I go, whatever I do, the stardust in me is from you. All of the girls who raised their children up well. All of the girls who rose each time they fell. All of the girls who worked for the coming new day. And all of the girls who knew the price they would pay. All of the girls who somehow still kept the faith that all of their girls would find a much better way.